सलाम सलामुन हिया हत्ता मतलइल फज्र सदक़ल्लाहुल अलीयुल अज़ीम अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला
Jazakallah. I would now like to request Raza Bhai to please come forward for the recitation of Salam and Marsiya with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajjil farajah.
बोली माँ क्या हुआ सकीना को गशिये क्यों आ गया सकीना गशिये क्यों आ गया सकीना को क्यों ये खामोश हो गई आखिर किसने क्या कह दिया सकीना को किसने क्या कह दिया सकीना को क्या खबर इसको क्या हुआ बेटा देखो अब जरा सकीना देखो अब जरा सकीना को ना शिकायत है अब तमाचों की नारसन का गिला नारसन का गिलास हाय गुर्बत में छीन कर मुझसे ले गई क्यों क़ज़ा सकीना को ले गई क्यों क़ज़ा सकीना को बोली माँ क्या
सलवात जब दाग बेकसी का सकीना उठा सकी और दर्द दिल न खौफ के मारे सुना सकी खाए तमाचे शुम्र के जब तक के खा सकी सिन कम था दुख बहुत सिन कम था दुख बहुत रोई तो जालिमों ने जफा बेशुमार की आखिर ये जबर दे के गर की तो शुम्र पुकारा खामोश हो और चुप हुई तो बेपिदरी ने कहा कि रो गए शिद्दत अतश से पुकारी के पानी दो गए याद करके रह
गई बाबा की प्यास,
गए याद करके रह
गई बाबा की प्यास को।
सोई जो आंसू पहुँच के चश्मे पुराब से है
हुसैन कह के फिर उठ बैठी
है हुसैन कह के फिर
बैठी
दिल में समा गया था जो शुम्रे लई का डर सोने में काप काप के ये कहती थी रात भर फरियाद छीनता है गौर शुम्र बद गौर
आता इब्ने साच पूजा के मैं,
आता इब्ने साच
पूजा के मैं
ज़ैनब पुपी संभालो कलेजा धड़कता है
सज्जाद भाई देखो ये खुली गुरा,
सज्जाद भाई देखो ये खुली गुरा जब प्यास लगती रोके चचा को पुकारती दुखते जो कांशाए हुदा को पुकारती आता न जब कोई तो खुदा को पुकारती जीने से तंग हो के
खजा को पुकार,
जीने से तंग हो के खजा को पुकार कहती तीने चचाना इमाम उमम रे
रुलवाने को अधूरे रोने को,
रुलवाने को अधूरे
रोने को
जिंदा से कहती थी ये कभी वो असीर गम हो जाएगा कल एक तेरा मेहमान कम मैयत किसी की नन्ही सी निकलेगी सुबह दम बानों से ये खिताब
कविता बजा,
बानों से ये खिताब
कविता बजा
एक ताज़ा मौत होगी नबी के घराने में अम्मा लुटोगी
आज की शफ़क़त का,
अम्मा लुटोगी बानो पुकारी लुटो चुकी अब लुटूंगी क्या बीबी न नाम लुटने का लो तुम पे मैं फिदा गौहर छिने तमाचे लगे कांशा हुआ लुटने से
मेरी बीबी का बर्दिल नहीं,
लुटने से मेरी बीबी
का बर्दिल नहीं भरा
ज़ैनब की पुश्त नौ के सीना से फिगार है
मेरी प्यारी लुटने की उम्मीदवार,
और मेरी प्यारी
लुटने की उम्मीदवार है।
अब क्या लुटूंगी माल नहीं जर नहीं रहा अकबर नहीं रहा लियसगर नहीं रहा रहने को कैद खाना मिला घर नहीं रहा हाथों मेरी
इस्मा बनी जेवर नहीं,
हाथों मेरी इस्मा बनी
जेवर नहीं
दौलत है कौन सी जिसे जिंदा में खोंगे
रोना था जिसको रो चुकी अब किसको रो,
रोना था जिसको रो चुके
अब किसको रोएंगे।
अब मौत मेरी सबको मुबारक करे खुदा मरते ही मेरे खैस से सब कुन बहो रवा जाता रहे बुखार बरादर का बेदवा जन्नत को हम
मदीने को,
जन्नत को हम रवाओ मदीने को गुल हो सकीना लेके बला सबकी मर गई। हैदर की पोती मुश्किल है आसान, हैदर की पोती मुश्किल है आसान कर गई।
Jazakallah. I would now like to request Sister Rubab Zaidi to please recite some poetry with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Salam, everyone. My poem tonight is inspired by one of my favorite stories from the life of Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi. Rumi is best known for being a poet, but before he was a poet, he was actually a very prolific scholar of jurisprudence and Quran. So this story took place one day when Rumi was sitting next to a water fountain. He was sitting next to the fountain, and he was surrounded by all of his books, which, as an alim, were his prized possessions. Suddenly, as he was sitting there, a man named Shams Tabrizi walked up to him. And Shams was kind of known for being a madman. He had a bit of a reputation for being crazy. So Shams walked up to him, and he pointed to his books, and he said, "In chist, what is this?" And Rumi responded, "In an as kituna midani." This is that which you wouldn't know, because Rumi was thinking, I'm a scholar, I'm a man of knowledge. Who is this guy? So then Shams collected Rumi's books, and he threw them into the fountain. And naturally, Rumi was really upset by this. So as Rumi was freaking out, Shams picked up the books out of the fountain, and when he picked them up, they were completely dry, as if water had never touched them. So Rumi looked at Shams and he said, "In chist, what is this?" Shams responded, "Inan ast kituna midani." This is that which you wouldn't know. So in this story, Rumi represents rationality and Shams represents love. So this poem is called The Fountain. The stranger looks at me with pure derision in his eyes. I brace myself as he clears his throat and begins to rationalize. "Forget about Karbala," he says. "It's been 1,000 years. These gatherings you hold are as unproductive as your tears. The memories you grieve are a mere page in history. Your time would be better spent engaged in rationality. You waste 2 sacred months when a few days should be sufficient. Holding gatherings to weep is bizarre and inefficient. There are atrocities unfolding now, more worthy of your attention. This tradition of Azza is just a meaningless invention." His voice is cold and cynical, but his eyes contain a plea, as if the idealist within him is yearning to be free. His words bespeak a restlessness that lies deep inside his core, like a disenchanted wave disconnected from the shore. I could utilize the language of pure logic in reply, and if I speak to him through reason, he might be pacified. But within him I see hunger for a higher elevation, so I'll speak to him in the dialect of true illumination. I want to take him somewhere deeper, to a place beyond his mind, because logic will not quench his hidden thirst for the divine. I tell him that the modern world, with its fixation on fact and reason, forces man to neglect his soul and commit internal treason. When the metaphysical is forgotten and the material is deified, we gradually lose touch with the universe inside. No amount of worldly pleasures or material distractions can give the tired soul a true taste of satisfaction. Like a restless hummingbird that craves the sweetest flower, there are only certain elements that grant the soul true power. And of all the elements that speak to us upon the unseen plane, love is the greatest one, and its pinnacle is Hussain. When I come to these gatherings, it isn't rationality that drives me. I come here seeking love to uproot and catalyze me. Like the finite book of a rationalist, my heart seeks what it can't contain. In search of quenching this burning thirst, I reach the doorstep of Hussain. I place my heart within the fountain of all the tears I've cried for him, and for every tear my Mawla quenches me as if I've lived and died for him. When I retrieve my drowning heart, it isn't dry like the books of Rumi. 100 roses bloom within it as if there's a river running through me. Then I marvel at the generosity of Karim ibn Karim as doorways open in my soul to the light of Ar-Rahim. Breaking through the looming shadows of a world that deifies the mind, Hussain says, surrender reason and fall in love with the divine. If you fly on the wings of reason, you can only get so high, but a soul on the wings of love can reach beyond the furthest sky. The mind can't see beyond itself, for its limitations cage it in, and reason is insufficient to quench the deepest thirst within. Your mind has many battlefields, but it craves a place of rest. Your mind has many battlefields, but it craves a place of rest, to soothe the restless heart that beats within your weary chest. This farsh is that place of healing, that immortal sanctuary. And though these gatherings are fleeting and their length is momentary, the life that blooms within us when we commemorate this pain, the life that blooms within us when we commemorate Hussain, is a ray of light from the divine that enables us to grow. And this light grows ever brighter as our tears begin to flow. Washing away the darknesses that cloud our weary souls, we bring the fragments of ourselves, and our master makes us whole. If the human heart is like a desert, then its oasis is Hussain, for his remembrance grants it life with the generosity of rain. So approach the fountain of his love and let your tired heart be drenched. There is no yearning in this world that my master cannot quench. We are still unfinished books, and God's pen is still in motion, but if our pages bear the blessings of our Imam and his devotion, then we too might taste the ecstasy of the love our Mawla knew, and we too might learn the noble art of embodying the truth. Salawat.
Jazakallah, Sister Rubab. Enlightened as always. Alhamdulillah. One more loud salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Respected sheikhs, elders, brothers and sisters in faith, assalamu alaikum. Just a quick reminder of upcoming programs and events, and then I will request Sheikh Amin to please ascend to the minbar. After tonight's program ends with Salatul Maghribain, we do have a Shab-e-Aza by Anjuman Shaykh Khuda that is being held here at CFK at 9 p.m. For next week, we will be commemorating the Arba'in of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. And the Martyrs of Karbala next Friday and Saturday here at CFK with a 2-night program. Sheikh Mahdi Rastani will be speaking at these programs with the topic Islam's take on music. These programs will begin with Salatul Maghribain, inshallah. I repeat, not like this weekend. Next weekend's program will begin with Salatul Maghribain, inshallah. On Saturday, we will also be offering Amal Arba'in with English commentary with Sheikh Mahdi Rastani at 6:45 p.m. And we will have an open Q&A with Sheikh Mahdi after the end of the program on Saturday at 10 p.m. As always, event details are posted on our webpage, cfkdfw.org, where you can subscribe to our newsletter and to our WhatsApp group, where program schedules are sent out as well. Let us now recite a Surah Fatiha for the marhumin of today's program sponsors and the marhumin of Brother Asif, Sister Zinat Patel and family. Let us all include our marhumin and the marhumin of the Ummah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Let us now request Sheikh Amin to please ascend the minbar with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. And Mominin, if I could request please everybody to move forward so that we have space in the back for the people who can join us later, inshallah. One more loud salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعن الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين. Last night we started a little tough topic. Inshallah, we look to wrap up tonight. And that was the topic of how is it that Imam Hussain saved Islam? It's a line that we hear growing up all the time. If we ask our kids, they'll know it. They'll know the answer. Who saved Islam? Imam Hussain saved Islam. But the problem is, as we grow a little older, certain questions come up for us. Certain discrepancies present themselves that go against this idea of Imam Hussain saved Islam. We will still believe in that, but we won't have answers to certain questions. Discrepancies, and I'm going to recap last night very quickly, inshallah, so that we, those of us who might not have been here last night, which was a lot of you actually, so that we're all on the same page, inshallah, and then we can continue. The discrepancies that will come up, for example, is that, okay, Imam Hussain saved Islam. How? Because I don't see the Muslim Ummah awakening after Imam Hussain became Shaheed. No one really cared during the time of Imam Sajjad. Right? And I'm going to share with you some of these stories tonight to show how off the Muslim Ummah was that I didn't get a chance to share last night. How off the Muslim Ummah was when it came to Islam after Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. Did the Imams take over after Imam Hussain? No, the Imams never took over after Imam Hussain. Imams weren't killed, persecuted, poisoned. They were. So what is this saving Islam? What does it mean exactly? This is where you slowly come to the conclusion, actually, that Tawheed was saved. Tawheed was protected. Yeah, sometimes people will not go by certain rules and laws of Islam. Okay. But what constitutes the core of Islam is that Tawheed, correct? Was Islam adhered to after Imam Hussain? Not really. Bani Umayya, were they destroyed right after Imam Hussain was killed? Everyone wakes up as awakened. They say, let's go kill these Bani Umayya. How dare they? Look at how evil the Khilafah has become. How dare they? No. 71 years after that, Bani Umayya were still in power. And so we have all of these discrepancies. So then someone might ask themselves and revisit this whole idea of, hey, how did Imam Hussain protect Islam? How did Imam Hussain preserve Islam? I just want to share some stories with you on how bad things had gotten during Imam Sajjad's time, right after Imam Hussain, yes, the fourth Imam. It says here that Mas'udi narrates, he's one of the historians, says that corruption, fasad, had become so prevalent during the time of Yazid, and this is after, of course, Ashura, to the point that those who were around Yazid, those who were his subordinates, it also went to them as well. They were also corrupted. To the point that music and singing and all of that started happening in Mecca and Medina. Like, I can understand other places. But this place, I mean, this is the place that till today, even if you go to Jeddah or you go to, what's the other cities in Saudi, you go to those other ones, yes, you'll find Riyadh, yes, you'll find that, yeah, there's barely any Islam there, but you go to Mecca and Medina, all you see is beards about 1 meter long, man. Correct? Like, Islam is there, or else the beards wouldn't be so long. So you'll have this in other places. You won't expect it here. It says during Imam Sajjad's time, it got so bad that you will have singing, you will have music, and these things happening, and gatherings in which people are publicly drinking. Wow. Mas'udi narrates that. Or, for example, another one. He says that it's as if these two big cities of Hijaz, meaning Mecca and Medina, are places of music now. They had turned into places of music. Like, you don't go there for spirituality, you go there for music, as if, wow. In which not just normal lay people were engaging in these acts, but rather the fuqaha and the zuhad were also every now and then, you know what I'm saying, doing that thing too. Whoa. You wouldn't expect the fuqaha, the ones who are supposed to be holding the banner and the flag of Islam, to be engaging in such acts. to the point that some of the abids were engaging in these matters, and so on. I'll give you one or two stories here as well to show how bad the situation was. There's a person by the name of Dahman. Dahman of then, a very famous singer / rapper, whatever you want to call him, Tupac of then, whatever. This person, Dahman, you can tell I'm from the 90s. I don't know any other names, all right? Dahman, it says one day, he was with the judge in Medina, and so someone comes in the presence of this judge. So you got the singer, you've got the judge. Two people come to this judge now. One is from Iraq, one is from Medina, and they're arguing over something. This belongs to me, no, it belongs to me. Dahman in all of this, what does he do? Dahman, he says, I'm a shahid, I'm a witness, and he testifies that this belongs to the person of Medina. Now this person that's from Iraq, he says, yo, this is Dahman we're talking about here, judge. Hey judge, how can you accept this person's testimony when they're a person who publicly sins? Singing and music back then usually was, most of it was haram, if not all of it, okay? How can you accept this person's testimony? This is Dahman. The judge says, I know who he is. Of course I know he's Dahman. If I didn't know who he was, I would have asked of his identity. I don't know. I know who he is. That's why I'm accepting it. It's like, but he's a singer. He does haram and all that. Look what the judge says. The judge says, look, man, which one of us doesn't listen to this kind of stuff? Come on. Yeah? And so just go and give this person's haqq. Get it over with, man. Okay? This is where we're at now. Those of you who might be a little familiar with the laws of judging in Islam, it's not very easygoing. Very strict, actually. The shahid, the person who is giving shahada, is giving testimony, has to be adil. Just like a person who wants to lead salat. I don't know why you guys pray behind me, but if you want to pray behind someone in salat, they have to be adil. They don't publicly sin. This person is not adil. But what's the justification? Justification is, look, everyone's doing it. And so we have to be careful. You know, I'm saying this on the side. Just because everyone does something doesn't mean anything Islamically. All right? Anyway, other accounts. It says in Medina, and I'm reading through different accounts, so we see it's not just one person somewhere said this. Like different accounts throughout history that are talking about the time of Imam Sajjad. The time that an Islamic awakening should have taken place. After Ashura, right? Because he protected Islam, correct? It says there were gatherings of, na'udhu billah, dancing and singing that were mixed, and there was no parde between the men and the women in Medina, of all places. And then finally this story. There's another singer by the name of Jamila. Okay? And so it says that this Jamila was renowned celebrity singer. Okay? I hate to talk about these things, by the way, brothers and sisters, but these are the realities of Islamic history, unfortunately. It says this Jamila, who was very well known, was a celebrity. She wants to go to Hajj for some reason. Maybe to get her sins removed. So then it says, as she's going to Mecca, they received her to such extent that no other mufti, yes, no other grand scholar, no faqih, no muhaddith, a person who narrates hadiths, no mufassir, no judge, no zahid had ever been received. Right? This happens to us today as well sometimes. All it's about is the celebrity status. That's all that matters. It's how much of a following a person has. That's how important they are. We seek refuge in Allah. No. What matters is how obedient a person is to Allah, and how much, if they're going to be a person who represents religion or speaks or does anything for the people, how much this person cares about akhirah versus dunya. Because people will follow that person's footsteps. So it says, once she left Medina for Mecca, all these famous singers also went to bid her farewell. Male and female. And it has like 20 names here, you know? You're like, wow, this is not something that we have in the past 50, 100 years, yeah, of singers and all that, like being famous. You have these people's names recorded 1,400 years ago. Like these are the OGs of like haram stuff. Okay? It goes all the way back. Haram has always been there, brothers and sisters. Right? Shaitan's got us running in circles. I say this all the time. Shaitan's got us running in circles. Back when I was a kid, some of you have heard me say this before. Tight jeans were not a thing. You got beat up in school for it. Now it's a thing. Bet you 20 years later it's not going to be a thing again. And Shaitan's just going to make us running in circles. One day plaid is, you get beat up in school if you wear plaid. Another day it's retro. It's big glasses, ugly shoes, and sneakers. Back then no one cared about some of these sneakers that are all cool now. Anyway, Shaitan's got us running in circles. Haram is always there, brothers and sisters. Shaitan doesn't have too much to entice us with. That's why he keeps making us run in circles. 20 years pass, 30 years pass, a new generation, 2 generations come. They don't know what the previous generations have experienced. They think they've stumbled across something new. Little do they know that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, this was the same thing that people were dealing with back then. Anyway, 1400 years ago, there's some weird names here too. Like these were the top singers back then. Heat, Tuwais, Dalal, Burdul Fuad, Naumatul Dahi, you know what I'm saying? Rafan, Rahma. This guy's name is Rahma, for God's sake. And then the women, Fariha, Izzatul Mayla, Habbaba, Salama. I can't even read some of them. All right, anyway. So it says, all these people, they come and they bid her farewell, this Jamila, who's a renowned celebrity of that time. This is, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about America 1985, 1995, 2005? We're talking like 64, 65 AH. 50 years after the Prophet passed away, ish. This is the situation. So someone will say, I thought Islam was saved. This is a question that some people will ask. Then what happened? You want me to go a step further? Let's go a step further. Forget about the harams. Let's talk about the wajibat. We have several accounts. I'll just share one of them with you, but they're similar ones. That says, for example, Anas bin Malik. It says that he would say, he's famous, Anas bin Malik is famous. He says that I can't think of anything that was happening during the time of the Prophet, of the Sunnah of the Prophet, that's happening now in this time that we're in. And they're like, wait a minute, what about Salat? He says, after what you have done to Salat and even destroyed Salat itself. Or there are other cases where scholars would weep. What are you weeping for? They say people don't know how to pray. So Imam Hussain stood up against Yazid. He said, because if I don't, وَعَلَى الْإِسْلَامِ السَّلَامِ, Khudaf is Islam. But now we're seeing that, okay, after Ashura, these are the problems that are still there that are plaguing the Muslim Ummah. So my son or daughter will ask me, well, Baba, how is it that Imam Hussain saved Islam? And this is where we started the whole discussion last night. That we look at Imam Hussain, we only see Karbala, we only see the epic of Ashura, and all the fighting and all of that took place there, all the mazlumiyat that happened there. And so we try to figure out how did this solve all the problems? And we get kind of stuck here. And so we can't figure it out. While there's another aspect that we usually don't give too much attention to, and that was the lack of bay'ah of Imam Hussain. So Imam Hussain, what he did is 2 things. Number 1, he didn't give bay'ah. That's the part we don't talk about too much. What we talk about and focus on more is the second thing Imam Hussain did, is what he did in Karbala and Ashura, that beautiful day of Ashura that Bibi Zainab says, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila. All I saw was beauty. Correct? That's the part we see. While the active ingredient here that saved Islam might be something else, might be the first one. And so this is where we developed this 2 perspectives. We discussed one of them last night. One was a minimalist perspective of things, where they say, look, yes, Imam Hussain did a lot of things, but if you want to figure out how he saved Islam, let us think, what would have happened if he gave bay'ah? And I just explained this last night. You can refer to the recording, inshallah. But in a nutshell, if Imam Hussain had given bay'ah, the cancer of Sham, that Yazid was living in Sham, would have spread all the way to Mecca, Medina, all of the Muslim lands. And everyone would have said, Imam Hussain is okay with this Islam of Yazid. And guess what? Yazid was 33 when he came to power. He'll live for 30, 40 years at least, brothers and sisters. 40 years that you have a stamp of approval from Hussain alayhi salam for whatever you're doing. Of course, everything's going to be lost after 30, 40 years. Yeah? So what is it that saved Islam? The opposite of giving bay'ah. Because giving bay'ah equals Islam being lost. The opposite of giving bay'ah is what? Not giving bay'ah. And so even if, this is what the minimalist perspective says, okay? It's not necessarily something that I will believe in. But this is what the minimalist perspective says, and it's not, we don't want to take away value from it just because it's minimalist either. It's actually nice. It says, look, not giving bay'ah was so important that even if Imam Hussain had died a natural death, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 days after them coming to him and asking him for bay'ah, even if he had died a natural death, he would have still saved Islam. Why? Because he didn't give a stamp of approval. Yazid can never say, hey people of the world, of this Islam Muslim empire, Hussain was okay with what I'm doing. You know what it's like, kind of what Bibi Fatima did. Salawatullahi wa salamu alayha. What did Bibi Fatima do? Did she go out and like draw a sword or something? No. What did she do though? She just showed everyone, I'm not okay with this. This is important. So let us not undermine the same thing that Imam Hussain did. This is what the minimalist approach will say. Once again, minimalist doesn't mean wrong. Minimalist doesn't mean it doesn't have value. It will say, Bibi Fatima left this dunya. It's in Bukhari, although they have explanations for this, some of them. But she left this dunya while she was angry at the two. Okay? While she was upset with the two. She was upset with Abu Bakr. So now the question is to be asked, okay, does that mean that she had his wilayat or she didn't? Because we have a hadith that says, if you leave this world without knowing your Imam, you die a death of jahiliyyah. This is the part where they can't answer anymore. Can anyone say Fatima al-Zahra left this dunya, but because she hadn't given bay'ah to the Imam, quote unquote, of her time, being the first Khalifa, na'uzu billah, that she died a death of jahiliyyah? Can anyone say that? Bismillah. Anyone. I dare anyone to say this in the Muslim ummah. That's why they have no choice. They go and say, oh, Bukhari said this, but that part that says she was upset is an addition. It's not part of the hadith. And other explanations, that's fine. But for us Shia, we know exactly what's going on. So the minimalist one will say, look, even if Ashura never took place, the killing of Imam Hussain, the massacre of Karbala didn't take place, still Imam Hussain saved Islam. Because it's all about not giving bay'ah. Okay? This was the minimalist approach. Now we want to see if there's anyone out there who might have a different opinion here. And that no, it's not just lack of bay'ah that saved Islam, something else as well that takes part in all of this. That is the maximalist approach. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. All right, what is going on here? They will say, the maximalist approach will say that if Imam Hussein's lack of bay'ah was the main reason why Islam was saved, and we don't talk about it that much, to the point that he was willing to die in that way, there's a package here though. A package that saved Islam. One of the main ingredients of this package is, yes, not giving bay'ah. But this package is made up of more than just not giving bay'ah. It is also Ashura and what took place in Ashura. It is also what Bibi Zainab did in Sham and Kufa and Imam Sajjad did and all of that as well. It's more than just that ingredient that you mentioned. Okay? Why do you say that? They say, look, if it's just the bay'ah not being given, it will not guarantee the overthrowing of Bani Umayya. We have to understand, they'll say, that if Islam is going to be guaranteed, we have to make sure Bani Umayya are not in power anymore. But they weren't overthrown after Ashura. It doesn't matter. They were overthrown 70 years later. That's what they'll say. And when I say that's what they'll say, it doesn't mean I'm against it either. I'm just saying that's what this side will say. Okay? Number one, Bani Umayya have to be overthrown as well for Islam to be saved. You can't just say that Imam Hussain didn't give bay'ah, and so He saved Islam. Why? Because the people are going to forget. 20 days later, they're going to forget. Oh, Imam Hussain didn't give bay'ah. You know, as a matter of fact, brothers and sisters, it might have been a smart thing for Yazid after Imam Hussain didn't give bay'ah, to just let him live. But the fact that he is also killed, yes, that is what also plays a role in all of this maximalist approach, we'll say. That every detail of Karbala and Ashura and this whole journey of Imam Hussain plays a role. So number one, it's not just not giving a stamp of approval. It is more than that. I want to make sure this person will say that Banu Umayya are overthrown, number one. Number two, I want to make sure that there are revolts, revolt after revolt that happens after Ashura. Instability. Not because the Muslim Ummah deserves to be unstable, but these Khalifas, they have to learn that, look, you're not approved by the majority. Yes, there will be some who will not care what's going on, but there will be some who will rise against you. We want revolts as well. When did these revolts start taking place? After Ashura? We'll get to some of those, inshallah. What else? They'll say that till today even, Imam Hussain, his memory, his story and all of that, till today even, the fact that some people will have revolutions in the name of Imam Hussain today. For example, they'll use Islamic Revolution 1979. Or they will say Ayatollah Sistani telling the people to go and fight ISIS when they're destroying Islam. Remember that? Okay. They'll say, if these things, these revolutions didn't happen, Islam in its real form would have been lost. And so Islam is saved because the people made these sacrifices. Question, why did they make these sacrifices? Because they learned it from Imam Hussain alayhi salam. All right, so this maximalist approach here, is also sounding interesting and convincing. That it is all these things coming together as a package. Because if you don't overthrow Banu Umayya, you will have problems. This has to happen. So now, question. You're saying Banu Umayya have to be overthrown. All right, but they weren't overthrown until 71 years later. Let's talk about that a little bit. You know what the answer that will be given is? How many dynasties do you know of that lasted less than 100 years? Can you even call it a dynasty? Can anyone tell me how long the Abbasid Khilafat lasted? The Abbasids, they came after Banu Umayya, right? 400? Give me one person from the sisters, give me a number. Brothers say 400. Just throw a number out. They forgot their numbers. 400, brother says, 500 plus. The Abbasids, they lived, the dynasty, they had a dynasty and ruled over the Muslim lands. That's a dynasty. Not some puny 70-something years, although that's 70 years after Ashura. Add to that maybe 20-something years of Muawiyah's time as well. Correct? So the first thing that will be said is this, that yes, when you look at it, it didn't happen right away. It happened after a while. But how long did that take? At the end of the day, these guys, the life of their dynasty was cut short big time. Now Rasul Ja'fariyan is a famous historian. He has two things here, he says. Two reasons why the Banu Umayya were overthrown by who? By Imam Hussain. First, let me read to you an excerpt from his book. He says, and if I can have some water, that would be good. He says, for a state to be overthrown, there are some direct and indirect causes. Just because something's not direct doesn't make it not a cause anymore for something. There can be indirect causes as well. For example, there's 20 dominoes stacked, right? I push down the first domino, the 10th domino falls. The 20th domino falls. Domino number 20 fell because domino number 19 hit it, correct? Fell on it. Does that mean that domino number 1 has nothing to do with it? As a matter of fact, someone might argue that the main reason was domino number 1 actually. Jazakallah. Recite salawat. So he has a good point here. Ja'fariyan has a good point here. He says, look, for a state to be overthrown, there are some direct and indirect causes. Both are important. Indirect causes might be far away in time from the actual downfall of the state, but without a doubt play an important role in the downfall, and there is historical evidence for this. The only time a direct cause, such as a widespread revolution or foreign attack, can yield its effect is when the foundations of the state are weak. If people are going to revolt, if a state is going to be overthrown, it has to have been weakened enough in the past, or else it can't be overthrown. For the direct cause to be able to have its effect, there have to be a lot of indirect causes at play before that. Why are we going to be like little kindergartners and just look at that final domino and say that's what it was? Let's go back. It was domino number 1 actually that knocked everything else down. Meaning it cannot gain popular and national support for itself. Such a movement, such a revolution can't unless there are some things that happened before. Okay, so that's what he says. What do you have for us now? Oh, Ja'fariyan, what do you have for us? Oh, famous historian, what do you have for us? He says, look, I want to say 2 things here. Number 1, Imam Hussain, through doing what he did, from start to finish, stripped the Banu Umayya of any Islamic legitimacy that they had. First, by not giving bay'ah, of course, but all the way to the point, look how they massacred Imam Hussain on the day of Ashura. Yes? And so this is without a doubt going to plant the seeds of hatred towards Banu Umayya, number 1. Number 2, he says, also, from the beginning, even before the conquest of Mecca, from the beginning of the prophethood of the Prophet, you can say almost, there has always been this tug of war between 2 clans. Who are they? Bani Hashim, Banu Umayya. Right? Abu Sufyan is Banu Umayya. All the way to Muawiyah. The only time is you have a little gap somewhere, okay? A little gap where some of these middle, very insignificant clans took power. Abu Bakr, Umar, they're not from like big tribes, okay? They're from like little insignificant, not very important tribes. But in reality, it's all about Banu Hashim versus Bani Umayya, he says. Now it reached the point after Imam Hassan and Muawiyah's time and all of that, that everyone's like, okay, we're done. Like this whole arena that was Bani Umayya versus Bani Hashim, Banu Hashim don't have a contender anymore. They don't have a player in this field anymore. It's all over. He says, as his second point, he says, Imam Hussain alayhi salam revived Bani Hashim altogether and showed that no, this contest is still ongoing. There is still a contender out there, okay? And I'm going to be the flag bearer of that, Imam Hussain salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. And so these things come together and start shaking Banu Umayya. Shaking! Is it over? It's not over. But now let's fast forward. What did the Bani Abbas say when they came, when they wanted to come and overthrow Banu Umayya? What was their slogan? Their slogan, you start noticing that slogans here and there have the name of Ahlul Bayt in them. They didn't have it before. They have the name of Imam Hussain in them sometimes. Interesting. Bani Abbas, what was their famous slogan? That we are taking over. We're justified in going against the Khalifa of the time. Why? Because we are after one thing. Ar-rida min Ali Muhammad. We are after the satisfaction. And the one that Alu Muhammad choose as Khalifa. There was no slogan like this before. Unprecedented. But all of a sudden, it's cool to use this name now. I want to share with you 3 stories, as quick as I can, on how Imam Hussein's name all of a sudden is showing up in different places. Okay? 2 or 3 things, inshallah. I'm going to go through this very quickly. It says here, one of these contemporary Arab writers, he might not even be Muslim, or he's probably not Shia though. He says, in my opinion, in the long run, Imam Hussain was victorious. Okay? Although he wasn't victorious militarily, right? There was a military confrontation. Imam Hussain and all of his companions were massacred. So there's no victory there, of course. Yes, physical victory. But, and this is something we've all heard. Yes, Imam Hussain, blood over sword and all of that. We've heard this before. He says, but he planted the seed of kina, grudge and hatred and animosity towards Banu Umayya in all the people's hearts. He says, I have no doubt that in the end Imam Hussain was the victorious one. Why? Because eventually Banu Umayya were overthrown. Brothers and sisters, we can't just sit back and say, Imam Hussain didn't give bay'ah, so we're good. The people are going to forget, who was Hussain anyway? Imam Hussain will pass away, whatever. And I think Yazid should have done that if he wanted to really be victorious. Don't try to get bay'ah from this person. Don't put him out there. Yazid. But he put Imam Hussain out there. And that's why all of this happened. Another one. It says that, and this one's a little graphic, that the historians write that when they brought the head of Marwan, not Marwan bin Hakam, his grandson, his name was also Marwan II, you can look him up. Marwan bin Muhammad bin Marwan bin Hakam. Okay, this Marwan was the last Khalifa of Bani Umayya. Okay? They bring his head to the first Khalifa of Banu Abbas. Those guys who were there for 500 plus years. They brought his head to him. Look what he says. It's very interesting. He says, all praise is due to Allah. What was the first Khalifa's name of Banu Abbas? His name was Abu al-Abbas al-Saffah. Okay? Abu al-Abbas, here's the head of your enemy. We have overthrown Banu Umayya. Alhamdulillah. What are you going to say in your victory speech? It says that he did a long sajda shukr. And he gets up and he says, all praise is due to Allah, who got my revenge from you and your tribe. All praise is due to Allah, that gave me victory over you. Now it's not important for me. It doesn't matter to me anymore when I die. Abu al-Abbas al-Saffah is saying this. It's not important to me. I could care less when I die. Why? Because I have taken the revenge of Hussain from you. I've taken the revenge. So the name is being met. Now, is this a hypocrite saying it? Whatever it is beyond this discussion right now. What matters here is this, that Imam Hussein's name all of a sudden has value to be mentioned. Right? That's the start of a revolution, brothers and sisters. You get into the hearts of the people. Or finally, and by the way, this is it's so bad that they hated Bani Umayya so much. This Khalifa, after, now some numbers say 200, some says 2,000, some says 1,000, whatever it was in the hundreds at least. It says that he said, all right, bring the bodies of these Banu Umayya that we've all killed, pile them up together. Now some of these were still half alive, by the way. He puts a dastakhan on these bodies. Should I continue? And he has a meal there. And after his meal is done, this Abu al-Abbas al-Saffah, he says, wow, I've never had such a good meal in my life. Because I ate it on the bodies of Banu Umayya. Who in their right mind could ever do such a thing? But it reaches this point after only 70 years. Correct? And finally, this last one. This one's also interesting. I'd never heard this one before. There's this grandson of the great villain of Ashura, Sinan bin Anas, who some say he's the one who actually finished off Imam Hussain. Sinan bin Anas, la'natullahi alayh. Okay? He has a grandson who is a judge. He's an Islamic judge. It says that he went into Basra. The people requested him to do something for him. He said no. And so they chased him. They chased him, and he jumps into a ship to get away, and they start pelting him with stones. As they're pelting him, they say, "O son of the killer of Hussain." Just to add context here, Basra is where the Battle of Jamal took place. And you know, the people of Basra were fighting Imam Ali. You wouldn't expect the people of Basra to care too much about Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. But look, this package, brothers and sisters, the name of Hussain would not have reached the tongues of these people if Imam Hussain had just not given bay'ah and passed away. The package, the maximalist perspective says no, more has to happen if you want to save Islam. Yes, in reality, it is what you're talking about here. In reality, the main ingredient is not giving bay'ah, but this package has to be there. The whole package saved Islam. Okay? That is the maximalist approach. That's the first aspect that they say, look, if you want to guarantee Islam's survival, you have to make sure that Banu Umayya are toppled. Alhamdulillah, after 71 years, they were toppled. They'll say, also to save Islam, what do you need? I give you a list of 3 things. The second one, we need revolts, instability against the Khalifa, so that he can't do whatever he likes. And so they say, look, after Imam Hussain, what happened? Not Imam Hussain not giving bay'ah, after Imam Hussain was massacred. The package. That's when the Tawwabin, before the Tawwabin, the people of Medina, in the tragedy of Harra, they stood up against Yazid. They stood up. They said, we're going to take over Medina, the city that's always quiet and just keeps on going with the status quo. All of a sudden, Medina uprising. Of course, they were destroyed by Yazid's army. Then you have the Tawwabin. After Yazid is dead, the Tawwabin get up a few years later, after Ashura. We all know their story too. Thousands of them, all of them are massacred, till the last of them. God knows, maybe a handful might have survived. They all fought against Banu Umayya. Why are you fighting? We're Tawwabin. Tawbah from what? Because we didn't help Imam Hussain, and now we have to make up for it. So this revolt is all predicated on what? On Imam Hussain. After the Tawwabin, Mukhtar al-Thaqafi, like his mission was to go after the killers of Imam Hussain. So there you go. Yeah? After Mukhtar, Zayd ibn Ali. After Zayd, Yahya bin Zayd. One after another, instability. The Khalifa can't sit there comfortably and do whatever he wants. This is how you save Islam, they'll say, the maximalist perspective says. And finally, Imam Hussain, saving Islam isn't just then, it's now too, they'll say. Think about it. If Daesh had taken over Iraq, they had already taken half of Syria or wherever. Yeah? Takes over Iraq. What's next? Other countries that are next, next to Iraq. Oh, before you know it, Shia Islam is wiped out. Brothers and sisters, it's no joke. It is no joke. I have friends from Saudi Arabia. I know friends that they didn't know for the longest time. They didn't even know they're Shia. They didn't even know they're Shia. And somehow, some way, after being Wahhabi, they find out we're Shia. Taqiyya, yes, protects your life, but it is a double-edged sword at the end of the day. If Daesh had taken over, yes, Shi'ism, we don't know how far behind we would have fallen as a result. So they'll say that even Islam today is being saved, but why? Who's going to go fight Daesh? Who's going to go fight that? The ones who've learned from the school of Hussain, correct? So Imam Hussain saves Islam in this way. That's what the maximalist perspective says. Yes. And so here, after going through the minimalist, maximalist, let us try to conclude, wrap it up a little bit. Both opinions sound pretty good, actually, right? And so for me personally, what I'm inclined towards, I will never say this is the truth because I said it. No. What I'm inclined towards myself, and you can think about it yourselves, is that something in between the two. Okay? If you want to be very accurate with your words, I think this is the best way to put it. Don't say the whole package saved Islam. Don't say it was just not giving bay'ah that was saved Islam. Say the active ingredient, not main ingredient, active ingredient. It's like these ointments. You look at it, there's an active ingredient, but there's a lot of other ingredients too, right? Will the active ingredient do its thing if those other ingredients aren't there? Doctors, you guys didn't know your numbers. At least give me your medical expertise. Help me here. Can I, if there's an ointment that has an active ingredient, can I just take the active ingredient without using the ointment? Will it work, rub some powder on myself or something? Not necessarily, or it won't be efficient. Correct? It's just an example. I might not know what I'm talking about. Some of you might be laughing behind your mask at me right now. But all in all, there's a reason why there are some other inactive ingredients in things that we consume. Okay? Why? Because these things come together so that the active ingredient can have its effect. So let's say it like this. Let's not say it's all here or it's all there. Let's say, no, there is a package here, correct? The package comprises of an active ingredient, which is not giving bay'ah. But then there's a lot of other ingredients here as well. Not giving bay'ah in this way. That you take your family with you. You get slaughtered in that way. Bibi Zainab in Sham and Kufa, making sure that people know he wasn't giving bay'ah. Did you know my brother said, I am not leaving Medina ashiran wala batiran. I'm not leaving out of mischief or trying to have a good time or something. No, it's not because of that. I want islah. So you have an active ingredient alongside inactive ingredients coming together, making a package so that that flower can blossom. On one hand, you have Bibi Zainab's hand. On the other hand, you have Imam Sajjad. You have the blood of Ashura watering this plant, but there's a plant of, hey people, I did not approve of this. Now, this was regarding how Imam Hussain saved Islam. And you can have more thought on it as well. We can think about it more and discuss more on it as well. But this doesn't mean that this plant, if we're talking about how it saved Islam, that there's a plant here now that also has tons of fruits that we can benefit from. We won't say this is what saved Islam, but this is what has inspired millions throughout history. The story of Hur inspired millions. The salat of Imam Hussain on Ashura doesn't allow me to get lazy anymore because I have to take a break from my computer or my phone to pray. These little tiny lessons all the way to the greatest lessons that we take from Ashura. That's a different story. Saving Islam is one thing. The fruits of this movement, the fruits of this revolution, if you want to call it that, are something else, brothers and sisters. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. So as I said, part of this package, that there was a package here. Part of this package was the head of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Part of this package was the head of Aba Abdullah. If Bibi Zainab has to do her part, if Imam Sajjad has to do his part, the head of Imam Hussain has to do its part as well. This head of Imam Hussain has touched God knows how many lives. The head that was disfigured on the spears under the hot sun. Brothers and sisters, do you think they put Imam Hussein's head in a little case, kept its respect, make sure it doesn't get hurt, things like that? No. This head was under the hot sun, disfigured. It would fall from the spears under the camel's feet, the reports say. To the point that it says that Abu Ubaidullah bin Ziyad, the account says that he was poking the lips of Abu Abdullah. But then when it's in Sham, it says Yazid was poking the teeth of Abu Abdullah. Some of our historians have explained. They say, do you know why it said lips over there, but there it said teeth? Because the lips of Abu Abdullah were mutilated. The head didn't make it to Sham the same way it was in Kufa. If the stick is poking at the head, it'll be lips. In Kufa, in Sham, it'll be teeth. Nothing is left of this head. This head has touched many lives, brothers and sisters. One of those lives that was touched was Bibi Rubab alayhi salam. Bibi Rubab, Imam Hussain loved her very much. They say he would recite poetry. He would say, I love a home that Rubab is in, Sakina is in. Rubab, the mother of Sakina. I love a home that has these two in it. He would recite this poetry for them, how much they loved Imam Hussain. But on those final moments, brothers and sisters, on Ashura, when Imam Hussain wants to leave, it's as if the women knew these final moments are for Zainab. And so they kept away. They said, let Zainab have her final moments with Hussain. They never got a chance to properly bid Hussain farewell. And it seems that this got to them to the point that it says the narration that in Kufa, in the gathering of Ubaidullah, this head of Hussain was brought. Rubab couldn't hold back anymore. She ran and she hugged his head. And she begins to speak to the head of Hussain, oh my dear Hussain, I will never forget the spears they pierced your body with and how they left your torn body on the hot sands. After Karbala, after this whole story, she's a widow now. People come to her asking her for her hand. She says, I'm not going to have a father-in-law after Rasulullah. Hussain alayhi salam was everything. And so they say two accounts here. She goes to the grave of Hussain, stays there for 1 year and dies out of grief and weeping. Another account says she went to Medina and she just lived under the hot sun for 1 whole year, no roof on top of me. When Hussein's head was under the hot sun, I can't be under a roof anymore. How can I be under a ceiling? And so she died after 1 year under the hot sun. Brothers and sisters, when we talk about the love of Rubab, when we talk about her relationship with the head of Hussain, the tragedy of being far from Hussain, we might forget that there was another tragedy she had. There was this little 6-month-old baby in Karbala, probably a very cute and beautiful baby everyone loved in this camp. All I will say is this, that a point in time comes that Abu Abdullah feels something warm running down his arm. The blood of Ali al-Asghar, فَذَبَحُوهُ مِنَ الْأُذُنِ إِلَى الْأُذُنِ, from ear to ear. That 3-pronged arrow pierced the neck of Ali al-Asghar, and his head is hanging by its skin. هَوَّنَ عَلَيَّ مَا نَزَلَ بِي أنه بعين الله ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. ماتم الحسين. يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين.
जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने मुझे बालों से पकड़ कर है तमाचे मारे, मुझे बालों से पकड़ कर है तमाचे मारे। मैंने सरशिम्र से मांगा जो तुम्हारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा, जब मुझे है वो जो दुर आपने तोहफे में मुझे बख्शे थे, वो जो दुर आपने तोहफे में मुझे बख्शे थे, उनको बेदर्दी से जालिम ने उतारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा, जब मुझे है आपके सीने पे आराम से सोने वाली, आपके सीने पे आराम से सोने वाली, सो के अब खाक पे करती है गुजारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा, जब मुझे है मुझे बालों से पकड़ कर है तमाचे मारे, मुझे बालों से पकड़ कर है तमाचे मारे। मैंने सरशिम्र से मांगा जो तुम्हारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा, जब मुझे है वो जो दुर आपने तोहफे में मुझे बख्शे थे, जो दुर आपने तोहफे में मुझे बख्शे थे, उनको बेदर्दी से जालिम ने उतारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा, जब मुझे है आपके सीने पे आराम से सोने वाली, आपके सीने पे आराम से सोने वाली, सो के अब खाक पे करती है गुजारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा, जब मुझे हर तमाचे पे सकीना ने, हर तमाचे पे सकीना ने पुकारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा। سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه محمد وعلى محمد. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه محمد وعلى محمد. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله، أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، حي على الفلاح، حي على خير العمل، حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله، لا إله إلا الله. الصلوات.
Flashing, is that okay? Battery.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله وأنه حجة الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أستغفر الله الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد كذلك الله ربي الله أكبر اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أستغفر الله الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد استغفر الله الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أستغفر الله الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم أدخل على آل القبور السرور اللهم أغن كل فقير اللهم اشف كل جائع اللهم اكسو كل عريان اللهم اقض دين كل مدين اللهم فرج عن كل مكروب اللهم رد كل غريب اللهم فك كل أسير اللهم أصلح كل فاسد من أمور المسلمين اللهم اشف كل مريض اللهم سد فقرنا بغناك اللهم غير سوء حالنا بحسن حالك اللهم اقض عنا الدين وأغننا من الفقر إنك على كل شيء قدير.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله وأنه حجة الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
إن الله وملائكته